Priya's best friend had been talking about something else entirely. A renovation project, I think, or a restaurant that had recently closed. When she looked at me across the kitchen counter, paused in the specific way that people do when they decide to say the thing they have been not saying, and told me that Priya still checked my profile. Then she picked up her coffee mug, asked if I wanted another slice of cake, and the conversation moved on. I stood very still for a moment. I was trying to decide whether I had heard that correctly, or whether my understanding of the English language had quietly and without notice become unreliable. Her name was Priya Mehta. She had been my colleague, then my work rival, then my project lead, then, after 18 months of precisely managed professional distance, my friend, in the way that two people become friends when they are placed repeatedly in the same rooms and eventually run out of reasons to be guarded. She had an opinion about every decision the team made, and she voiced it in the particular way of someone who has already considered 4 counter-arguments and dismissed them. She held her phone face down in meetings. She drank black coffee from a blue enamel mug she brought from home, and she had never once, in my presence, admitted to being wrong about anything without adding the reason why being wrong had also been, in a specific sense, correct. My name is Daniel Osei. I am 34. I work in technical project management for a consultancy firm, which is a way of saying that I spend a great deal of time in rooms where people talk past each other, and my job is to work out what everyone actually means and write it in a document no one reads. Priya worked in the same firm, in the strategy division, which means we were in many of the same rooms and frequently disagreed about what everyone actually meant. We had been assigned to the same project 11 months ago, a merger integration that was not going well with a client who was not happy about it, and a timeline that had been described by Priya in a kickoff meeting I was also attending as optimistic to the point of being delusional. I had said, because I was defending the timeline, which I had partly designed, that optimism and delusion were not the same thing. She had looked at me with the expression of someone encountering a position they find interesting, but insufficient. Then the meeting had ended, and we had been professionally civil in every room since. The existing dynamic was this. We respected each other in the way that two people respect an opponent they cannot quite get past. She thought I prioritized delivery speed over quality. I thought she prioritized quality over reality. We were probably both right. We were also both for 11 months in the same project rooms, the same status meetings, the same post-meeting debrief corridors where the real decisions got made. She carried a blue notebook everywhere, small, hard-covered, with a red elastic band she had added herself. I had seen her write in it in every meeting we had ever shared. I had never seen what she wrote in it. By the time I noticed that I wanted to know, I had already been watching it too long. The disruption came on a Thursday evening at the end of a difficult quarter review, when the client had been less than warm about our progress, and the room had gone the particular quiet that rooms go when everyone is deciding how to feel about something before they are willing to feel it. Most of the team left quickly. Priya stayed to collect the printed documents, and I stayed because I had left my jacket on the back of my chair. And then I had not left because she looked briefly like someone who had absorbed something and had not quite finished absorbing it. I asked if she was all right. She said she was fine, in the way that people say they are fine when they mean that they are managing, which is different. I said something about the review being difficult. She said that it had been accurate, which was worse. I said that accurate did not mean insurmountable. She had not seemed to expect that, and for a moment she looked at me with an expression I had not seen before. Not sharp, not managing, just slightly unguarded, like a window that had been opened by accident rather than design. She said, "You always do that." I asked what I always did. She looked at the stack of documents in her hands. She said, "You find the part of it that isn't over yet." Then she looked like she had said more than she intended, and she picked up her notebook, and she left first, and I stood in the room for a moment with the very specific feeling of having caught something I didn't quite understand yet, but knowing I had caught it. That sentence did something quiet to the air between us. I blamed the ventilation system in that conference room for what happened next. This was convenient for me. Over the following weeks, I began noticing the things I had, it turned out, already been noticing for some time. The way Priya's voice shifted registered very slightly when she was about to say something she had decided to say rather than something she was saying because it was expected. The way she held her pen in meetings, not writing, just holding. When someone was speaking and she was listening to what they were actually saying underneath what they were technically saying. The way she redirected a conversation when it landed somewhere uncomfortable, quickly, competently, and so smoothly that you only noticed the redirection afterwards, when you were back at your desk trying to remember how you had arrived at a different topic. I also noticed that she had started leaving the coffee station at the same time I arrived at it. I told myself that was coincidence, and coincidence is a perfectly reasonable explanation that required no further examination. Then her friend Meena told me about the profile. Meena was Priya's best friend from university. She had come to collect Priya from the office after a long week, and Priya had been held up in a follow-up call, and Meena and I had been waiting in the small kitchen off the main floor when she said it. I had met Meena once before, briefly, in a corridor, and she had the quality of someone who pays close attention and does not feel obligated to conceal it. She had been talking, then she had stopped, then she had said it. That Priya still checked my profile. Social media, the professional one, though I suspected that detail was not the whole of it. Then she had picked up her coffee and asked about cake, and Priya had walked in 2 minutes later, and the conversation became about the restaurant that had closed, and I spent the rest of the evening being entirely normal about something I was not at all normal about. That is not a feeling. That is a feeling with considerably better documentation than I was prepared for. I went home and sat with it for a while. I considered what it might mean. I considered several alternative interpretations. I discarded them on the grounds that they required considerably more contortion than the straightforward one. I went to sleep eventually. Not immediately. The following week, there was a team lunch that Priya and I both attended, and both seemed, independently, to find slightly too much to look at. Not each other, specifically, just other things. The menu, the window, the salt. I had by this point accepted that I was going to need to either address something or become a person who thought about salt for the rest of his professional career. The moment arrived not from me and not from her, but from her notebook. We were alone in the project room after a late session. This had become, I realized, a recurring event that neither of us had organized and neither of us had avoided, and she was writing something, and I was looking at a screen, and she closed the notebook and said, "Without looking up, Meena said something to you." It was not a question. I said, "Yes." She was quiet for a moment. She set the notebook down with slightly too much precision. She said, "What did she say?" This was also not entirely a question. I had the specific impression of someone who already knew the answer and was deciding, while asking, whether they wanted to have received it. I said she could ignore it if she wanted to. I said that, whatever Meena had said, it changed nothing about how I thought about working with her, or about, and I chose the word carefully, anything. I said that we could go back to how things were. She looked at me then. Properly, directly, in the way she had not done since the conference room. She said, "I don't actually want to go back." She said it quietly. Her hands had gone still on top of the notebook. Her voice was in the register she used when she had already considered several options and had selected the one she was going to have to live with. Then she waited. I said, "Then don't." She looked at me like she was making a final calculation. Then she said, and I will remember the exact words for a long time, "I told Mina you were probably the best read difficult person I'd ever had to work with." And then I kept saying things like that, in different variations, for about 8 months, until she told me I was describing someone I was in love with, and I should do something about it before I lost the ability to pretend I wasn't. I did not say anything immediately. The body processes some things faster than the mind does, and what I felt first was not a thought, but something that settled, somewhere behind the sternum, quietly, like furniture that has finally been placed where it was always going to go. I said, "How long have you been sitting on that?" She said, "Since November." I said that it was currently July. She said, "Yes, I know." I reached across and put my hand over hers on the notebook. She looked at it, then at me, and the particular expression she had, not unguarded now, but choosing, deliberately not to guard, was one I had not seen on her face before, and immediately recognized as the real version of her face. She said, "I'm not going to be easier to work with, by the way. This doesn't change that." I said that I had not been expecting it to. And then she laughed, a real one, not the managed kind, and somewhere in the corridor outside, a door slammed, and she startled slightly, and then laughed again at having startled, and it was the most unperformed thing I had ever seen her do. 6 weeks later, we had a policy about work discussions on Saturday mornings. Priya had written it. There were 3 bullet points. I had signed it without reading it, which she had noted, in writing, in the blue notebook. She still disagreed with me in meetings. She was, if anything, more precise about it, because she was no longer spending any energy on managing a professional distance that no longer existed. I found that I did not mind. I had always done my best thinking in response to someone who would not let a weak argument through without flagging it. She was very good at flagging it. Months later, we were in the same kitchen where Mina had told me what she told me, and Priya was reattaching the red elastic band on her notebook. It had frayed at one end, and she had replaced it twice. And she would not switch notebooks, and Mina came in and looked between us with an expression of complete satisfaction that she made no attempt to conceal. She said, "Was it me? I feel like it was me." Priya said, "It was not you." Mina looked at me. I said that it had certainly not been nothing. Priya looked at me with an expression of exasperation so well worn it had become a form of affection. She told me I was not helping. I said I knew. Years later, when people ask how it started, Priya says it started because she ran out of plausible alternative explanations for her own behavior. I say it started because someone said something and then changed the subject, which was the right amount of information delivered at the right moment. We are both right. We usually are. That part has not changed. Nothing had appeared from nowhere. It had simply stopped being ignored. What would you have done if someone had told you something like that, and then moved on as though it hadn't been said? And have you ever found yourself checking on someone without quite admitting to yourself why? Leave your answer in the comments. If this one stayed with you, a like and a subscribe means I'll keep making them, and I'll see you in the next one.